It's time for the Onebar and Lupagus Show, bringing you anything and everything Minnesota Vikings.
Welcome to professional football.
All right, welcome back to another Onebar and Lupagus Show. I am Lupagus, and today we are SKOL'ing with the enemy with Derek Larger from Bring the Juice podcast. He's our enemy this week, but it's nice to have you on, Derek.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
All right, awesome. I got some questions for you, and I think, from a Vikings standpoint, every Vikings fan wants to know what are your early impressions of your new cornerback, Xavier Rhodes?
Well, I mean, obviously, first game had some errors. Some stuff that can be fixed, but that just comes with the game. Everybody has their bad games every now and again, and we kind of knew what we were getting in Xavier Rhodes, and a guy that was an All-Pro once, but we didn't expect him to quite be that. But we expected him to be a solid corner, which we still think he has the ability to do so. He's healthy. He's been a very good role model for a lot of the young secondary guys that we have here. So still early in the season, didn't have a great start, but we're hoping he can bounce back.
Yeah, that's kind of what he is. But good point, though, about him being a leader on the field. That's something we currently do not have in our cornerback group in Minnesota. So we actually could have used his experience last weekend. All right, so, and I'm not trying to rub any salt in the wound here or anything, but just, how pissed are you guys as far as losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars last week? And how did that, overall, what was your opinion of the team going into the season, your expectations, and how did that loss kind of affect those expectations?
I think a lot of Colts Nation fell into too much of the hype. We had this offseason where we have never seen this from Chris Ballard, where he went out and got an all-pro defensive tackle, went and got a quarterback, a couple other acquisitions that we don't see that from Chris Ballard. He's always been pretty mellow when it comes to the offseason and free agency. So we saw this team getting so good around the quarterback. We were just kind of looking for that quarterback. And I think a lot of Colts Nation just kind of fell into the trap of, we believe the hype until we get kicked in the mouth. And then we're just like, oh yeah, we got to remember this might take a little bit to get flowing again. So, yeah, my expectations for this team is not really changed yet after one game. Obviously it was a bad loss, and you have to obviously take accountability. And I think that's what the Colts players and coaches have been saying all week, that I have to do better. I have to do better. I have to do better, be more accountable. That's been every player that's been interviewed this week. So I hear a lot of that, and I think that they will. I think this is just something that's going to have to take a little bit more time to get ready. But once this team starts figuring out its identity, I still expect this team to go to the playoffs, and with the schedule we have, certainly bids that a good chance. So expectations still are playoffs and contend with some of the best, but obviously after week one, some things need to be reevaluated.
Yeah, I got to think for you guys, losing the Jaguars is like for us losing to the Lions. It's just it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah, right.
All right. So curious how you guys feel about the Phillip Rivers acquisition and what, from a national standpoint, Jacoby Brissett seemed like a serviceable quarterback. You guys went on and got Rivers. Were you happy about that, or would you rather seen you guys just stick it out with Brissett and see how that went?
Well, I think the majority of Colts Nation said that it was time for a change because the Colts were 28th in deep ball passing offense last season, and that made it so difficult to effectively move this offense. A funny stat, despite what anyone wants to say about Phillip Rivers' touchdown to interception ratio in that game, I'll throw out a stat for you. In the first half of that Jacksonville game, Phillip Rivers threw for 227 yards. The Colts in 2019 only had 5 games where they threw for 227 yards in a game. So, say what you want about Phillip Rivers and his, occasional bad throws. He threw the ball very effectively for most of that game. I do anticipate that Phillip Rivers and this pass offense will continue to get better. just had a few hiccups. And I think a lot of it had to do with coaching. I think they tried to use the running backs too much, especially in the passing game. And we got away from the run, and we forced Rivers to try to do too much, I think, in the first game. And it was working early, but it didn't work as the game went on. So I think that, coaching needs to get better and ensure that this passing game becomes less being used and try to use more of the run game, because that's what this team was founded on and what this offensive line is capable of giving. But I still think that Phillip Rivers is going to be a good quarterback here. I think Colts fans are a little too quick to jump on one game and say, oh, he's trash. It's time to say that Ballard made the wrong call here. I think it's too early to say that.
All right. Fair enough. You mentioned the run game. So, Marlon Mack was out with injury. You got Jonathan Taylor now, Nyheim Hines. How do you feel about that two-headed beast at running back, and are you confident the rookie can carry the load?
Oh, I'm confident that Jonathan Taylor can carry the load. My only issue is that, his vision and his field running is certainly not as good as Marlon Mack. Say what you want about Jonathan Taylor's speed and power, but if you can't find the right holes half the time, it doesn't always matter. And Marlon Mack had much better field vision and being able to find the hole in the offensive line, especially after being behind that offensive line now for 3 years. And honestly, I think our third running back, Jordan Wilkins, is going to see a fairly sizable role and take that spot in Marlon Mack, because believe it or not, our third running back, Jordan Wilkins, actually led the NFL last season in yards per carry with a minimum of 100 touches. So believe it or not, our third best running back actually led the league in yards per carry. He has great vision. He can definitely follow the line much better than Jonathan. But, this is the time for Jonathan Taylor to step up. This is why we drafted him, to help this team out. And Nyheim Hines is still a serviceable back, and he's a guy that you can throw out of the backfield, and he makes plays with the same way that Tom Brady has used his wide receiver or his running backs for a long time. Nyheim Hines fills that role. Still a very talented running back group. They can be used in so many different ways, but it's just a matter of the run blocking, sustaining, and just finding the holes.
Well, that being said, you guys weren't really that in need of a running back. When you made that pick in round 2, was that a shocking move as a Colts fan to see him take a running back there?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a shock because, you thought there could have been so many other things the Colts would have done. You could have went cornerback, you could have went offensive line, but we weren't probably going to go offensive line, but you could have went defensive lineman, you could have went corner, things of that nature, and maybe even another receiver if you wanted to double down on it from Michael Pittman. But Jonathan Taylor's name comes up, and I'll be honest, for 5 minutes, my jaw just dropped to the floor. I'm like, I didn't know how to react because I was live streaming it to everyone, and we're like, what just happened? Yeah. I think looking back on it now and over the offseason, I think it was a good move. I understand why they did it. And I'm excited to see what Jonathan Taylor can bring to this team.
Yeah, he's a hell of a back. So let's get into a little bit Vikings talk here. So Vikings are coming to town. What scares you the most about the Minnesota Vikings?
That offense definitely scares me with, Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. I know that a lot of people say that, but, it's true. Adam Thielen's a very great wide receiver. Dalvin Cook's one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL, most would argue. And that front 7 for you guys. I know that on your defense, you've had a few injuries, but that linebacker core is what scares me with Kendricks and a few others. Because, Jacksonville's linebacker core got us in the run game, and we didn't account for that. Miles Jack and Joe Schobert were stuffing every run hole that they had. And there's just nothing else that we could do about it. So that also scares me. How are we going to be able to run the football against a pretty decent front 7 in Minnesota as well? So, your passing game with Adam Thielen and the ability to run with Dalvin Cook scares me. And that front 7, I'm just wondering how we're going to be able to run the ball against it.
Yeah, and actually they were pretty good against the run. It was getting to the passer that was a problem last week. So hopefully they figure that out. What are some advantages you think the Colts may have over the Vikings, just looking at the matchups and where you see some, on the Colts side where they get in the check mark as far as who's got the advantage?
Well, obviously, our offensive line, as good as your front seven is, our offensive line's still really good in pass protection. And I think that they got punched in the mouth pretty good with running last week. So I think they're going to look back on the game film and say, man, why did I do that stuff? And I think they're going to get a reality check, and they're going to play even harder this next week. And, with Quentin Nelson on that left side, that should scare anybody that goes across Quentin Nelson. I'd be afraid to go in front of him this next week. I think he's going to remind people of how good he is. And the one other thing I would say that we have the advantages is obviously our wide receiver group versus your secondary. I know that you were talking to me earlier and saying that, there's a couple injuries in that secondary as well, and that could be accounted for. And you were talking to me about how the lack of pass rush late in the game against Green Bay hurt. That's another thing that I think the Colts can take advantage of. We do have some, pretty solid and experienced wide receivers, even though we didn't do the greatest job of getting them involved in Jacksonville in certain situations. I still think that T.Y. Hilton brings that experience. He's a very good route runner. Zach Pascal's coming on really good. Paris Campbell looked really good against Jacksonville, and he's finally healthy and ready to go. So I think that we can take advantage of the secondary. We just can't throw 2, 3, 4 interceptions like we did against Jacksonville. That just can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you got any Colts receivers in fantasy, this is the week to start them with confidence. Did Pittman get in last week at all? Or
Yes, he had 2 receptions for 11 yards. It was very shocking to me that we were in the red zone 3 different times in that game, and we did not pass it to him once. Being 6'4", 220 pounds, you would imagine a guy that's bigger than Julio Jones. You would imagine you'd throw to that guy in the red zone because he's bigger than any corner you could stack up against him. But, I mean, we didn't do that. And I think that, again, it was on coaching, just not understanding your matchups and being, look, you got to go to the guys that have mismatches, but we just didn't do that against Jacksonville. I'm hoping they'll do that this week against the Vikings.
Yeah, well, I hope they don't. But who's one sneaky player kind of flying under the radar on the Colts that more people should know about?
It's Paris Campbell, and he was on last year, but he was hurt so often last year that he very rarely saw the field. But last season, when he played against Pittsburgh, he played in about less than a half and had over 100 scrimmage yards in that game before ultimately going down with a foot injury, I believe. So this is a guy that has spent all off season getting his body and mind right. And I mean, he had 6 catches last week for 70 yards and had a rush for a 10-yard gain as well for the Colts last week. So 7 touches for over 80 yards. I mean, this guy definitely is very dynamic. He's so fast. Nobody can cover him in the flat. I really hope that the Colts continue to use him. He definitely has the speed. And as long as he stays healthy, Paris Campbell is going to be that surprise factor for the Colts this year.
All right. So if you can take one player off the Vikings and right now put him in a Colts jersey, who would you take?
Oh, man. I can't confidently sit here and say I would take anyone from your defense right now. I mean, even though you have some studs, I would say take Kendricks. But then again, like, we have our own studs at linebacker that I'm happy with. But I'd have to take Thielen. Honestly, I would just love to have Thielen because, like you were talking to us yesterday, that, Thielen may not be the most athletic guy that you'll ever see on the field, but he makes the catches when they're there. I mean, when the ball hits his hands, he very rarely has a drop problem. And that's a problem that the Colts have had at the wide receiver and tight end group for a long, long time. And I think Adam Thielen just adds another dimension to that pass game. And what he could do right now with Phillip Rivers and T.Y. Hilton on the other side, oh, man, that would be a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. He's he's a guy too that came from nowhere, a walk-on, worked his way through special teams, and just where he's come has been just great to see as a Vikings fan. And he went to school, a tiny little school in Minnesota, so he's kind of a homegrown guy who definitely a fan favorite and a favorite of Kirk Cousins. So a lot of balls will come his way this Sunday for sure. All right, before I let you go, I got to ask you a prediction. Who you got winning this thing?
Oh, man. Well, I guess I'll have to stay true to my prediction that I said yesterday. And you know, I know it's kind of funny to think, you know, I'm a Colts fan and I'm coming on here saying, oh, this guy's going to be a homer. He has to pick his Colts. I'm not going to be that way. I'm being objective because that's what I need to be. I need to provide people with the accurate truth. And as much as I want to be wrong on this prediction, I think the Vikings will win this one 28-21. I think the Colts will fix up some issues that they had last week, and I think they're going to improve slightly. But I think that with how bad we look defensively, I don't think we're going to just click it on just in 1 week. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do expect it to be a close game. Both of these offenses, I think, can really take advantage of the current state of both defenses. So maybe this could even be higher of a scoring game, but I think the Vikings will win by 1 score.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be close too, and it's really. I made a prediction yesterday on your show. I think I said 21-17, but I think it's gonna be higher. Both these defenses having some issues. We could see another very, very high scoring game. So it should be fun. It'll be exciting. And Derek, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. Be sure to check out Bring the Juice podcast on YouTube, right?
Yep,
All
absolutely.
Right.
Bring the juice, baby.
All right, awesome. Hey, good luck this weekend. We'll see what happens.
Yep, same to you, man.
All right, take it easy.